Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. I'm joined back here with Sam Dorrer himself from the Echo team. Sam, how's it going?
Good. Thanks very much for having me, Nick. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure to have you here. I've done my due diligence. You guys are a great team from the Isle of Man, living in one of the coolest places in the world. How is it listening to motorcycles passing by every day? Or that's how I imagine it.
Yeah. It's one of the funny things about it is because of the way the track works, and I don't know how much people know about TT, but if you're on the inside loop of the track, it means when the race is run, you can't actually leave your house. so people don't think about that. But no, it's great fun, and lots of people come to the island for it as well.
Well, yeah, hopefully it's worth listening to all those beautiful noises, without leaving the house. But anyways, we're here for the Echo team. I've had a huge look at your website. I've been a big fan of what you guys have accomplished in the past few years. Can you tell me, Sam, where did you guys start all of this? Take us back to the beginning. How did Echo become Echo?
Thanks, Nick. I'll roll it right the way back then. Here we go. So it kicked off last bull run. I was off the back of another company, which I was the CEO for, an R&D company, and that was closing up, and I was looking at what to do next. And I was making some money in altcoins in that bull run season, and I was then stuck with the position of what do I do now? How do I get my winnings, so to speak, out? Because at the time it was even worse than it is now. We were trying to get stuff out into banks, and it was also a case of not even necessarily that I wanted to spend the money, but I wanted to diversify to different asset classes. So I've made money in cryptocurrency. Now I'm interested in, say, buying bonds or securities or property or some other type of asset. So I had that light bulb moment then, I suppose you'd say, and I had this idea of what if you didn't have to leave at all? What if you created an ecosystem which had all of these asset classes in one place, and you had attached to that, bank rails with virtual IBANs, you had cards attached, you had the securitization, the tokenization of securities, which at the time, obviously is hot topic now, RWAs, but back then, I don't think the term RWA even existed. So we coined the name Echo at the time because there wasn't a term for RWA, and we had this idea of echoing instead of an RWA. So you would echo a security, you'd echo a commodity. So what you would hold in the tokenized equivalent would be an echo. So we had this idea, and that's where the name came from.
Wow, yeah, that's a tremendous kind of a start. So I assume that's why that's how the Echo name came, and the whole brand you built it around the Echo, as you said before. Yeah.
And it's been a long old journey since then, obviously, because that was quite a while ago. So and I'll say this to any budding entrepreneurs out there: there's a big difference between having an idea and executing it all the way through, and there's a big gap there. So one of the first things we did was look around at all of the best regulatory environments to try and get something like this done. So we went jurisdiction hunting, as we do, and we eventually settled on the Isle of Man as the place to establish Echo because of the regulatory regime here, and the way that they view securities effectively, and the tokenized versions of securities. Not to mention, it has an excellent tier 1 offshore market regime and all kinds of other benefits as well, and the racing, as you mentioned. So,
yeah, definitely a big benefit, and we'll definitely dive into the Isle of Man a little bit later. But for from what I've seen, your mission, Sam, is to tokenize the world. So how does this go beyond just the blockchain and beyond just crypto trading?
Yeah, I think in this starts to touch then on perhaps the distinction or not between fintech and cryptocurrency blockchain type products. And you're seeing more and more the blending, I think, of these two realms. It's no longer just you're a fintech company because you kind of do something digital with finance. It's moved beyond there now, and I think this kind of project which we're doing represents the future of what finance is going to look like. It's going to be a true blend of centralized finance and decentralized finance in a single ecosystem.
I see. So, I mean, I'm a guy who's been in crypto for a while, and there's always a battle between centralization and decentralization. So, wouldn't you say the best way is to kind of diversify and have your hands in both cookie jars?
I think ideologically, I'm team decentralization, and I'll put my hands up on that one. But I'm also a pragmatist, and the reality is, particularly with the kind of things which we want to do in our roadmap, you have to begin from a centralized place. And this is mostly to do with the custodying of assets. It can be difficult to do the custodying of assets, particularly if you want to do minting of securities and things like that outside of a centralized environment. So it's kind of, and I make the analogy of building a tower where, we want to get to the top, we want to finish the tower, reach the sky, but you have to have your foundation blocks in place first. And for us, that means that we're starting with some of these centralized pieces, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to stay there forever. And I think that's something important to know.
I see. And I also see that one of your biggest or most important aspects are the community. So you try to be a community-driven exchange. And how does this community-driven approach actually differ from a typical centralized platform?
Yeah, so this is where the rubber hits the road, really. And I think it's impossible to not talk about the Echo token, which is attached to the platform when we're talking about the community. So Echo token is a fixed cap token, and so it's a deflationary token as well. And the way that it functions is we take 50% of top line revenue fee volume. So we're taking it back a step. And so you make a trade, normally an exchange which charges a fee on that. The exchange then takes the fee. Thanks very much. What Echo does instead is you make your trade, the fee happens. At that point, 50% is taken and given to all Echo token holders proportionally. And then 40% then goes to Echo, and 10% goes to an automatic buyback and burn. So that's the deflationary aspect. But what's super interesting about the 50% yield piece is that's also paid in stablecoin. So the token itself, it's not, and this is often the problem you get if you've been in the DeFi space before or seen other projects where they have like an interest or a yield payment on the asset, is they tend to print themselves into oblivion or they really struggle to hold on the price point because they're constantly fighting against the minting, the inflationary aspect of the token. So instead we decided to, rather than give people more Echo token, we would give stablecoin instead to really maintain and keep the value of Echo token strong.
Right. Yeah, it seems that's a tremendous long-term strategy, and it's great that you guys have went that way. So speaking of long-term, where do you see yourself in 5 years? The age-old question.
It massively depends on what the reg situation looks like in that time frame. I'm obviously bullish because it's my own project. I put my hands up with that one. I think that once we have brokerage licensing, because we already have a VASP, which is Virtual Asset Service Provision for custody and exchange of digital assets, but we'll pick up a brokerage license is the intention. Once that's in place, then the tokenization of different asset classes comes in. So sort of round one or phase one is the exchange infrastructure, which has to be a foundation block in the tower. The Echo token comes in, and then we also have another product for high net worth types called Echo Elite, which I'll talk about after. But the intention of all of this is to get to a place, like I said at the beginning, where it's a unified ecosystem. And an analogy I always talk to my team about is, and it's a bit silly, but I want it to feel and be a bit like the way that Apple products talk to each other, and you know that it all just works.
Right.
So you don't have this situation where you have all these bitty bits of software all over the place, and you're kind of hoping that things work and talk to each other. It's it's monolithic in the way that it functions together. And the more of these bricks which we build in the tower, the more powerful the individual tools get as well. So to begin with, we'll build out the whole tool set with cryptocurrency assets, with the intention to go back around afterwards and add in all the other additional asset classes into that toolkit.
I see. So
in a 5-year time frame, though, I think that if all goes to plan, I think that Echo will challenge some of the bigger players in the space, and not just in cryptocurrency, in the traditional markets too. Would be my open intention.
Grand plans, and I really hope you guys accomplish them as well.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, speaking of a Apple-esque appearance and everything working together, we obviously have your products and what you guys are actually building. So speaking of the platform itself, what are Echo X and Echo Pro, and how do they cater to different traders or trading profiles out there?
Yeah, so I imagine most of your listeners will know, like Coinbase, for example, it's a very similar setup between our Echo X and our Echo Pro. So Echo X for us is more of a retail tool, I suppose you'd say. But the distinction between us and, say, Coinbase is that the fee remains the same. So just because you're using Echo X, it doesn't mean that you pay a much larger fee, which does tend to happen in some of those other exchanges. In the back end, I don't know if people will be interested in this or not, but I'll shoot anyway. Echo X is technically to be considered a quanting engine, whereas Echo Pro is a full matching engine with order book, beaver volume. So that's the distinction too. For people who, in terms of the visual side, Echo X will look like simple swaps. Echo Pro will look like full charting tools that institutional traders and professional traders can use. So that's the visual difference as well.
I see. And how does the matching engine itself, how does it differ from those in traditional exchanges out there that are supposedly centralized?
Yeah, so the matching engine is a centralized matching engine for Echo Pro. How it differs is, one, it's been built from the ground up. What you'll find with a lot of exchanges is their white label exchanges, which are basically not quite a copy-paste job, but close, and then with a brand attached to the top. Whereas ours is built from the ground up with the latest technology. This also has the double effect of, and I mean, you see it now in some of the AI stuff, for example, where companies who are older are struggling to adapt and put the stuff in, whereas companies which can just build it up from the ground actually can sometimes build a better product. And I think that might be what will pull off with our setup, because we've been able to build with the latest ways of doing stuff from the ground up, as opposed to having to deal with legacy code systems and a horrible mess of code, basically, to try to squeeze stuff in, which is good. We'll be running for beaver volume. The Echo token obviously plays a big part in market making. We expect to have a lot of interest from market makers because of the nature of the Echo token, giving the fee, the yield in the token. But we'll also be running what's called a market making matrix, which is a set of different trading algorithms running in tandem to back off each other. It's algorithmic bots, which create beaver volume, because it's always a very difficult chicken and egg scenario normally with most exchanges, because you have this situation where, if you're a new user coming into an exchange, you have this situation where, if I trade, is there going to be someone on the other end of the thing to actually, settle and fulfill the trade, which is always, but if no one's there to do that, then no one comes, so then the exchange just collapses and disintegrates. And that's the problem which most new exchanges face. But we thought very, very deeply about the best way of doing this and getting through this. So we have a mixture of very deep liquidity partners and also this matching matrix engine. And hopefully with some help from all of our users, some volume from that side too. So, of course.
Yeah, no, hopefully it does. And speaking of efficiency, and obviously smaller, or should I say newer aged companies tend to be more efficient than trying to change something in a huge corporation. Is that the reason why you guys opted for Scala and these newer coding or this whole technology stack?
Yeah, and the other thing is, the Scala thing as well is also because it's a very nice one for hooking into institutional types too. So there's lots of reasons to use it, and we've built out the infrastructure in such a way so that it can deal with more than just cryptocurrency. Like the exchange infrastructure can deal with more than just cryptocurrency is the point.
Right.
So yeah.
So speaking of, thanks for answering, Sam. And speaking of Echo itself, if you had 30 seconds to guide me through the full user journey from registration to the first yield generation of a new user, how would you explain it?
So you type in echo.im in Google or your search engine. You turn up. It's going to have either a sign up or sign in button. You would press sign up. It will then take you through. You'll do an email and username type thing. You'll then get pinged to your email to set up passkeys. And then once you're in, there'll be a brief questionnaire around you as an individual for our risk tolerance. Because remember, we are a licensed. This isn't cowboy territory. We have to do KYC, yep. And then you'll do a biometric KYC. But the hope is that the way we've done it is we've made it a kind of what regulators and compliance officers like to call a walled garden approach, where it's I guess slightly tough to get in, but then once you're in, is kind of the route we've gone for. So you go through KYC, well done. You're then in, and then you'll see on your dashboard on your left-hand side of your screen. You can click through the various tabs. One of those will be to purchase Echo token. You'll then deposit stablecoin to purchase your Echo token, and there you go. You're good to go, and that's all you have to do. Once you have your Echo token, if you want to receive yield, you'll just have to move it to your what's called a savings account. And the reason we do that is it's not like a lockup in a traditional sense. It's just for a way for us to know what tokens are available for liquid or not on the exchange, and also because the intention is to offer yield on more than just Echo token. We'll do a partnership so that you can. I can't say who yet, but there's a partnership with an institution which will help us in providing yield on all your standard cryptocurrencies as well on top. So it will fall into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, that was much more than 30 seconds.
No, it's great. So it's simple. We can tell how passionate you are about the whole process, which is always nice to see. So from what I see, there's a plethora of different options and tools and things that you can do on the Echo platform. What are the most underrated ones in your opinion?
I think one of the things which people will be very interested in is not at launch, but very, very shortly after launch. We're talking less than 3 months or somewhere in that time frame, Q4. We'll do some bot stuff, which will be super interesting for people. Because we'll do like one-click buy style bots, which will allow people who don't necessarily want to trade but want to take advantage of active trading to participate, which I think will be cool for people, and also some builder bot tools as well, which will be more helpful for professional traders. So that's a nice tool which is coming. In terms of what's coming at launch, I think the big winner here is just you're so early on Echo token. I don't know, that's very cliche, but the reality is that you're going to be so early on Echo token, and because of the nature of the yield on the thing, you've got more time than anyone for that to work in your favor.
Yep, and time is money, and money is opportunity. And for everyone watching, links are down below, echo.im, so you can see what Sam is talking about. But speaking of the UI within the whole Echo ecosystem, why is it so different than other platforms, and what makes it a better onboarding experience for new users compared to other crypto platforms?
Yeah, we looked at. I can't even begin to count the amount of onboarding setups which we went through before we decided on our pathway, and we looked at all the data sets and the retention of other sites and what kind of ratio of people managed to get through the whole thing or gave up halfway through and all of that kind of stuff. So we had a long look at that. We looked at some of the industry leaders, like Revolut, for example, which has one of the better onboarding setups, and took some inspiration from them on a lot of that as well. Thanks, Revolut. And so it was super important for us for it to feel, and this is a wider issue around cryptocurrency generally, and this is something which is a hot topic, particularly amongst people who've been in the space for a long time. It's when do we get to the point with blockchain technology where people don't even know it's happening? But when do we get to a place where, you know, it gets beyond, you know, tech guys like myself and you, Nick, like talking about, you know, the tech stack and all that stuff, and it just happens, it just works. They don't even know they're on the rails, and that's kind of the direction which we want to, in some sense, get to in the UI. Because when you make a transfer from your bank, your standard bank, you don't necessarily know, you know, the rails that it's running on in the back end, or if it's on Swift or IBAN, or, you know, the different remittance and settlement houses it runs through, and all of those kind of factors. And I think some of that will be what breaks through truly into retail, when it gets to a place where the rails are all on chain, but it's not a pain in the ass.
Right.
Excuse my French, basically, to use.
Yeah. So how long do you think it's gonna take for that to happen? I mean, is it a year or two, or is it on a 5-year horizon? Or I'm all up for crypto. I love blockchain as a technology. I think it's one of the most revolutionary things we've seen. But there are differing opinions on when it's gonna become a mainstream. So what's your opinion on that?
I'm trying desperately, as you were telling me, to remember the name of the curve, the adoption curve, because there's an official name for the curve anyway, the adoption, and people talk about what part of the curve are we on. And we're almost certainly in second quarter of the curve,
Right?
maybe about to tip, and that's a really exciting time for people to get involved in this, because this is when it really, you know, you can start talking to your mum and dad about this stuff, you know? and it stops being some weird thing which, you know, you talk at the bar about, you know, after your tech conference, and that's I think it has to, if people want, even selfishly, if people want things like Bitcoin to reach new highs and new market cap, where do people think the capital is going to come from? You know, it has to come ultimately from the user adoption as well as institutional adoption.
Yeah. Well, the way I see it, Bitcoin itself, it can keep growing at least until it reaches the market cap of gold. And at least for Bitcoin, we know how much is out there. And for gold, I mean, you can see the reserves, but you know, how many reserves are there actually? You can't see what's going on in the mines all around the world.
Yeah, or what's in the vaults, but we won't talk about that.
Yeah, let's keep it quiet. Sure. Thanks for that, Sam. So you've implemented a real yield system using USDC. How exactly does this work under the hood for the not so tech savvy people out there?
So because the trading pairs on Echo, at least at this point, so it's easier at this point, are assets to stablecoin pairs. So, for example, like a Bitcoin USDC pair. When we do the fee, we make sure that we always take fee in stablecoin. Effectively, is the way it works. Either when you exit or enter. So that means Echo as a company has the USDC, and then it's a simple case of, you know, it's just a case of divvying out the same way that you dish up a pizza or a pie. Just, you know, depending on how big a slice you have is how much USDC you get, and that's quite easy to do algorithmically.
All right, well, that's a great explanation for everybody. Well, I'd like to say I'm tech savvy, but you know, probably not as much as you, especially when it comes to these new systems that you guys are implementing. So the 50-50 fee sharing or the 50-50 sharing model, how did you get inspired to do it, and how did you guys actually make it happen?
I think you know, so much of the blockchain community does talk about community, and we kind of just wanted to put our money where our mouth was, really, because it's very easy to kind of build a hype train, and this is the new hot thing. Join this community, but if you don't actually, if you as a community don't benefit in some sense in a financial way, then kind of what's the point, right? And that's why we decided to do this revenue model. For us, we're also able to do this fee share model because, unlike other exchanges, the intention is to have a wider product range than just an exchange as well. So we have the ability to do something like this where other exchanges really, they're just not able to do this. Like, it doesn't work in the books.
Right. And you've also implemented the buyback and burn models. So how do these work in practice?
Yeah, so technically it's not 50-50 split, it's actually a 50-40-10 split. So the 10 is the burn. So in the same way that daily Echo token holders receive USDC, there's also a daily buyback and burn. And it's important to remember that it's a buyback and burn because often people don't understand the distinction between just a burn and a buyback and burn. So a burn would be, say, Echo holds a great big pile of token and we just decide that some of our token no longer exists and we shoot it into a dead wallet. A buyback and burn is different. What we're doing is we're taking actual 10% of that fee revenue and we're buying it directly off the open market, buying the actual Echo token off the market and then deleting it. So we're not burning it out of our reserves, we're burning it off the open market, and that creates buy pressure, at least in theory.
Well, hopefully in practice too, but it does make a lot of sense in theory. And is that why the compounding mechanism in Echo's ecosystem is better than traditional decentralized finance, or are there other reasons as well?
I mean, I think it's a nice double whammy to have both the yield and the burn. To have an asset which both produces yield and also is reducing in actual volume for market circulation supply as well. I think that's nice. I know that there are other DeFi models around this. On the yield side, you do get the inflationary farm tokens, which were popular for a while. If you remember any of those, where you'd get 100,000% interest rate and immediately rate, and some of those things as well. There are some more stable yield models, which particularly when they own an actual chain, it's a little bit easier for them to do that because they're actually, the utility is the gas fees which are on chain, so in theory they can hand back some of the gas fees. But a lot of tokens really struggle with utility because often there is no utility and you're trying to wiggle some way of making it happen.
I see. So, speaking of governance and the legal infrastructure, how does governance work at Echo and what role do token holders actually play?
So we have an actual legal entity called the Echo Community Foundation. This is a separate legal entity to Echo Chain Limited, which is the commercial arm of Echo. What happens is 30% of total token supply is drip fed as part of the agreement to the Echo Community Foundation. The yield, which is generated from that Echo token, is then used to support voting, which occurs from Echo token holders.
All right, and the Community Foundation itself, why would you lock 30% of the supply permanently?
We lock 30% of supply permanently because we believe in the long-term prospect of Echo. And what we've done, even more so than just put it in there, in the actual legal contract in the foundation, is that it's not allowed to sell the Echo token. It's legally obliged to hold the Echo token. It can buy and sell other assets, but it cannot sell the Echo token. It can only use the yield generated on the Echo token.
I see. And this makes your whole model a little bit different than traditional DAO or decentralized models, even a little bit different than Polkadot. I think they're probably the largest in the world. So how does Echo's governance model differ from all the others, and why is it better? In what ways?
Yeah, so I guess if you're going back to your politics classes here, it would be called something like a a proportional republic or something like that. So there's an ECA, an Echo Community Foundation Council, which is the republic. So that there is an adult in the room, I'll say. And then there's also the proportional part. So the way that it actually really functions is the community is given, at least to begin with, we intend to expand. But to begin with, it's given 5 buckets of choices in different categories. So there'll be like a marketing category, there'll be an R&D category, there'll be a clerical category, for example. And the idea is that you vote proportionally. So you can take a record token, you can split that any way you want. And the way that the Community Foundation distributes the income is on that proportional model. So your token is not wasted. It's not a first past the post where one of them wins. All of the options presented to you will win. It's just how much do they win is the idea.
Right. And when that's actually great to see. Yeah, I mean, in practice, it's, well, both in theory and practice, it's quite interesting. And so let's say if I voted on a proposal and it went through, are you obligated to fulfill it?
Yeah, the Echo Community Foundation is obligated to delegate those funds to that particular item.
All right. And what?
The voting will run quarterly as well. So the idea behind this is, one, to give a chance for the foundation to actually implement some of this stuff, because some of it can be tricky depending on what it is. And also, so that after that quarter, the first one will be just the voting, but the second one hopefully will be, these are the things which were done previous quarter, let's vote on what happens on next quarter. So it was really important that for us, that people voting actually see some impact, like it doesn't just disappear into the ether, and it feels like your voice actually matters, was important to us.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that is important, especially from a community standpoint. And I assume that you guys have some checks, some compliance internally to make sure that all of this goes smoothly.
Yeah, a lot of it too, remember, is that because this isn't an actual legal structure, which is the foundation, there's actual rules associated. There's actual legal rules associated with what you do as a foundation. This isn't just a company which is being called a foundation. It's actually a foundation.
I see. So what kind of speaking of being legal and obviously being holding all their certificates and everything in the Isle of Man, I'm not sure if it's is it a republic or no, it's probably not, right? It's
technically called a crown dependency. So it's an independent country, but it's under the authority of the British Crown.
Okay.
It's a bit complicated, but it is technically an entirely independent country with its own rules.
All right. So the more you know. So in the crown dependency of the Isle of Man, what exact regulatory approval does Echo hold?
It used to be called a designated business for convertible virtual currency. It's now called a virtual asset service provider to mirror some of the EU licensing regime.
All right, yeah, that's good to know. I mean, you guys are fully certified, which is big, especially when going towards a worldwide crowd and trying to go globally. So I did read up on your website about the PCC structure. How does Echo Elite leverage it?
So we're in partnership with a very well-known law firm on the Isle of Man called Juris Trust, Simcox Juris Trust they're called. So we're in partnership with them because they have a special license called a Trust and Corporate Service Provision license, which is a regulated license. And that allows us to do with them a very special thing called a PCC. A PCC stands for Protected Cell Company. This was previously used in the insurance industry to separate liabilities between different clients. So if you had one client, with a building or one with an airplane and someone's airplane crashed, you didn't want the loss on that to affect the other client's tower. Was the idea. So it's used for that. We then created a novel use of the Protected Cell Company by allowing users by attaching wallets to cells, and then allowing users to deposit digital assets into wallets which are attached to cells. The advantage of a protected cell company is that by definition, it's in the jurisdiction of the Isle of Man. So your assets then are in the Isle of Man jurisdiction.
I see. So clearly, the team is fully compliant, fully regulated. It's great to know. And speaking of that, you guys probably have a huge spot in the future of cryptocurrency, of blockchain as a whole. And, in kind of a 5 to 10 year time frame, or let's go even shorter. So in the next couple of quarters in 2025, what is your team focusing on, and what are you guys going to or aim to deliver?
We aim to get the KEX, both Echo Pro, Echo X, competitive with the biggest players in the cryptocurrency space. We aim to tokenize securities and REITs, which are real estate investment trusts, and fingers crossed also we have some interesting work which we're doing in commodities. So that's what we're hoping to do by 2025. I would add that, before the compliance people kill me, that is based on having a brokerage license in place, because you can't touch securities until that's in place.
I see. And I assume you have plans for the brokerage license as well.
Yeah, already underway.
All right, that's great to know. And speaking of the rights and the fractionalized and the tokenized assets, there is these neobank rails that you guys are trying to implement. How does this change the whole world of digital finance itself?
Yeah. So for us, we want to create an environment where you as the user can go into a single portal, which is the Echo platform, and you can have in one place your wallet right next to your virtual IBAN, effectively a bank account. So the idea being that it's a totally seamless transition between cryptocurrency assets and fiat money.
Wow. And you guys are, I guess you're looking to compete, well, not guess, you're definitely looking to compete with traditional centralized markets. So what are your plans for integrating credit and lending or any types of insurance tools in Echo in the future?
So this is where we believe the decentralized model starts making more sense than the centralized model. We think that the best way to do borrow lending is with a borrow lend paper contract protocol, very similar to something like Aave, but on steroids, I guess I would say. Imagine a situation, a peer-to contract protocol which had more than just cryptocurrency as assets on that contract. So
right.
That's the plan.
Yeah, that's the plan, and it sounds like a good plan. It also sounds like you guys may be coming for the bigger exchanges out there in the world, such as Bybit, Binance, Coinbase. So, what's the plan, and how do you think you're going to position yourself against these behemoths in the crypto world?
Our hope is that the Echo token will assist us in bringing additional users in, because if you're trading on Echo, you're encouraged in some sense to bring your friends to Echo, because if they're trading a lot and you're holding Echo token, well, then you win. so we're hoping we start to create this network effect where if you can already do all the same stuff with us as you can do over there, but you can also make some yield, well, then it becomes quite a nice place to sit. But the hardest thing of all of these things is getting people to move to begin with, like getting people to make the transition, especially if they're already happy with a product, to move from that product to you. So it has to be, the value proposition has to be extreme for us to pull people out of some of these setups. So for us, it's going to be a mixture of Echo token, it's going to be asset classes which otherwise aren't available, and it's going to be a UI experience which we hope will be more sophisticated.
Right, so I see that you're probably going to be targeting everyone pretty much then, or is there any are you favoring in some way users that are native to the crypto world or new users in the crypto world, or are you creating a process and an onboarding procedure and a product that's available for all?
I think it's a phased approach. I think it'd be foolish to not think that the low-hanging fruit is people not already in the space, but we do want to get beyond that and bring in new clients too. I think in terms of the way the market is split, we do have, there's some internal issue around having to target both at the same time, retail client and institutional client. Because institutional client, we believe, and high net worth would be interested in the Echo Elite product particularly, and retail maybe not so much. But the point is that by nature of that Echo token, institutional client coming in will directly help retail client.
Right. And well, you have a product for both in either case, which is great. Okay. So speaking of, or kind of wrapping up a little bit about the future and your plans, what do you think might be the largest misconceptions that people have or that you've heard about Echo so far? Or are there none?
Can you give me a second on this one? Let me have a think. Can you just repeat the question for me?
Yeah. What would be the common? What are the common misconceptions that you've heard about Echo?
I think some people think that it's just another centralized exchange. I think you do hear that, and if I was an investor, and I say this because this is a conversation we have had with investors, or if I was someone new looking at the project and all I saw was an exchange, yeah, that would be a terrible thing to invest in because it's so oversaturated, and the big boys are very well established. But Echo roadmap is more than just an exchange, and that's the distinction here. The exchange is just a means to an end in a way.
I see. So, well, if the exchange is only obviously it's a pivotal thing in the ecosystem, but there are other ways that the community can benefit from Echo. So as a new user who wants to join your ecosystem, how can I benefit rather than simply buying tokens at these early stages? So how can I support you guys without?
Well, I think one of the very best things you can do is just tell lots of people. And that's quite a naive thing to say, but if you like the product, do tell people about it. And ask lots of questions, go to the socials. There's people, moderators sitting there to answer stuff for you. Just really, even if it's just feedback, we're open to that as well. If it's not for you, tell us why.
Right. Yeah, that's great to know. So I assume that even for the newbies in the crypto world, you guys have some educational assets. Where are we able to find those, and how can we leverage them to learn more about Echo and the crypto world?
So Echo itself will have an entire news arm attached to the site. So that will contain in it things specifically about Echo, but then also wider pieces on the cryptocurrency market. So you can find information directly on Echo. There's also been a number of articles released recently from some major publications on Echo. So if you're just looking for like a high level view, then they might be helpful as well.
I see. So okay, yeah, interesting to know. And is there a place somewhere there for, content creators such as myself, influencers, or people who want to help out in a different way?
Yeah, we have parts of when you go into that dashboard, you'll see yourself, Nick. You'll be able to go down the left-hand side and you'll see exchange and you'll see the Echo token stuff. But one of those tabs is rewards. And in there are various programs and ways to earn Echo token for doing certain tasks. And one of those is an affiliate piece and bringing in new users.
Tremendous. I'm very excited to take a look. And speaking of rewards, Sam, what has been the most rewarding part of building this whole thing over the years?
I absolutely love my team. and it's a bit cheesy, I know, but I think they're a really great team. And they've put something together which is really quite exceptional, with fairly minimal staff, at least compared to some of these other companies. And I'm just really proud of what they put together.
All right, and I kind of just want to pick your brain here for the end of the call. What kind of keeps you up at night crypto-wise, and what do you think the industry as a whole is doing wrong, and you can help kind of get us on the right path with Echo?
I think that it's a little bit too focused on the tech. I think that's ultimately, I think, where it lies. And I see similarities between Microsoft and Apple in the early days. I see similarities between the early days of the internet and post .com bust. I think history repeats itself, and I think what we'll start seeing soon is mature companies in this industry, which hopefully will take the blockchain flag all the way and have a level of sophistication and maturity about some of this stuff. Not that I don't love a degen meme once in a while, but it's, I think the time has come for the Googles and the Facebooks of the cryptocurrency industry to come forward.
Yeah, it's about time. We've been through like 8 years of memeage so far, and even longer actually. Yeah, it's been a nice ride, and you're a very insightful guy. As an entrepreneur myself, I would like to ask you to kind of spread the word to all of the people watching this, but also generally people trying to enter the Web3 or blockchain space. If you could give some advice, what would it be from your perspective?
Make something which people want. Ultimately, it's very, very easy to get stuck in your own head and think you have a cool idea or a cool product, but ask some people if that's something that they actually want, and ask not your friends and your family. Ask people which, don't really care. They're the best people to ask, because they'll give you a real opinion on whether that would be a good product or not.
I see. So it's all about the feedback. And, anyone watching this, if you have any feedback for Sam, make sure to give it, slap it down below and let us know. Final question, and it's been a pleasure, Sam, talking to you today. What kind of, if I were to ask you for a bold prediction in the crypto world for the next year or two, or even further, what would that be?
I think we'll start seeing the integration of AI agents with blockchain rails. I think people will start being able to send their AI agents off to do tasks and use the trustless nature of blockchain to do stuff. I think that's what will happen.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big mix of two of the greatest technologies known to man, probably in the past century or so. So definitely good prediction there. Yeah, it's a bold one, but let's see how it goes. So thank you everyone for joining in. This was Mr. Sam Dorrer himself. Check out echo.im in the description down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you want to see Sam again. And you're probably going to see Echo around everywhere, as these guys are just getting started, and I'm pretty sure they're here to stay. Thanks, Sam, and see you next time.